your client wants to hit a certain growth target over a set period of months, and you're not sure how realistic it is. One way to figure this out is by using benchmarks for how often a test is successful, how often that success translates to an impact on the overall business, and what's that really worth, just in general across all the tactics that we've seen. Right? So the way you can work this out is you can make a test calculator, and this is one that I made. So say the client wants to grow 100% over 6 months, right? Now, if they want to grow 100%, so they want to double in 6 months, how much is that in terms of growth per month? Right? And this, shouldn't be used. This calculation shouldn't be used across really long time periods because it tends to get a bit ridiculous because of the exponential effect. But one quick, easy way you can work this out is with this formula. So you use the power formula, and for the base, you use the growth target plus 1. And then for the months, so for the exponent, use the months, so it's 1 divided by the months, right? So the growth rate plus 1, and then 1 divided by the months. And it doesn't have to be months, it could actually be weeks or whatever. And then you want to take 1 away from the result. And that's what you get. So, if I said I wanted to triple instead, that's 26% growth every month. If I only want to grow 20% over 6 months, I only have to grow 3% a month, right? So that's that. Now, how many tactics would I have to run in order to get that growth? Right? So, using a few rule of thumbs here, we want to know what is the typical test success rate. And we've looked across our whole database, and actually it's on average about a third of our tests that we run are successful. So that is defined by people turning on the test and then turning it off and putting positive result, right? Rather than inconclusive or negative. For the industry average, it's actually more like 10%. Only about 1 in 10 tests succeed. And it just depends. It's not necessarily a good thing that that we're 3 times higher than average, although that's great. Great sales material. Actually, it could indicate that we're not testing anything too complex, right? If we're doing easy wins, you'd expect maybe the test success rate to be even higher. If the clients were in really bad shape, maybe like 60% of the tests we run would be successful. But typically, you can just use 30% as a benchmark, and that's going to be good enough for the purposes of these calculations. Metric impact. So that is when the test is successful, what impact does it have on the metric, right? So you can have a successful test that improves performance, but how much does it improve performance? So say you run a test on your Facebook ads and it improves click-through rate 20%. That would be one successful test with a metric impact of 20%. This could obviously be higher if you're making bigger swings. So maybe, and they're probably related, right? So maybe you're going for really big tests, and on average you're only going to be successful 10% of the time. But when you are successful, it's going to be a big improvement, 50% improvement. But typically, I would say on average, if you are successful, which is a third of the time, the success means about a 20% improvement. And business scope. This is the final piece of the puzzle. So how much is that metric worth to the business, right? So I mentioned click-through rate on Facebook. If Facebook ads constitute 10% of your total conversions, and it has to be conversions, not just traffic, right? If it's 10% of your conversions, as close to revenue as possible, then anything that improves the performance of all Facebook ads would improve the business by 10%, right? But it's affecting, the scope is affecting 10% of the entire business. If, for example, you are testing on the homepage and you're running, a CRO experiment, and it improves homepage performance by, 50%. how much of your total conversions come from people who land on the homepage. If it's 10%, then that's your business scope. Right? If you get 80% of your traffic through SEO, and you happen to improve your SEO 50%, and you had to test 10 things to get there, then this is what the numbers would look like, right? You're testing against 80% of your business, because 80% of your conversions come through SEO. The impact on your conversions from SEO might be 50%. And then the success rate, maybe you're expecting 1 in 10 of those experiments to succeed, right? You have to be careful here that the business scope, metric impact, success rate, they're all related, right? So if 80% of your traffic comes from SEO, but the metric that you were testing wasn't worth 80%. So maybe the metric you were testing was click-through rate on the search results. Maybe click-through rate on the search results doesn't necessarily drive 80% of your overall business. Maybe the search results pages are only 60% of your overall business. If you're testing email, and your email list drives 50% of your sales, but the only test that you're running is on the welcome email. The welcome email itself, maybe that only drives 10% of your total sales. So even if you increase 2,000%, it might not make that much of a difference to the business. If the thing that you're testing is only 5% of the business or 1% of the business. So always be thinking about this. And this is just a useful tool, and it's pretty straightforward, but useful tool for thinking about your strategy. How do you get these numbers up? Are you testing a big enough part of the business? Like retargeting, for example. How many people are really going to come back through retargeting? When you don't have that much website traffic in the first place. Always be thinking about the business scope, the metric impact, and the success rate that you expect. Once you plug these numbers in, you can work out, first of all, how many wins you need, right? So that is, in order to get your growth, you need to be able to have a metric impact on a big enough business scope in order to get that growth, right? So the calculation here is the metric impact, so 20%, divided by the business scope divided by the monthly growth, right? Or the other way around, actually. Monthly growth divided by business scope divided by metric impact, right? So that's saying that we need to have 6 experiments in order to hit our monthly, 6 experiments that are successful in order to hit our growth target. Now, monthly tests, that is based on the success rate, right? So, it's taking the monthly wins and then times it by the success rate or dividing it by the success rate, and that's going to give us how many tests we need to succeed, right? So, with a 30% success rate, maybe we think the success rate is going to be 50%, then we have to run less monthly tests, right? If we think it's going to be 10%, we have to run quite a few tests in order to get that win. If, for example, the metric impact is pretty small, we need to get quite a few wins, right? If we're testing on a lot of the business, we expect a really big performance improvement, and the success rate's really high. Maybe we only need to run 1 test a month, but on average, we won't have a win that month, right? So think about that. This is saying on average, we're only going to get, say, like half a win a month. So, 1 successful test every other month, right? So finding that sweet spot. And typically, again, 10%, 20%, 30%, that's a good benchmark if you don't know anything else about the business. So that means you can figure out, unless this client is running 21 experiments a month, which would be more of like a red client, black client, then they're probably not going to double every 6 months, right? You can also work backwards. So, if we only have, say, 10 tactics, do we have to have a higher business scope with the tactics that we use, right? So, if we're making tests on bigger parts of the business, like the conversion rate on the website, or which would affect all of the sales. Or maybe maybe Google Ads is a big part of the business, and we're owning the Google Ads account. Then we can have a much bigger impact on the business with less successful tests. Right? One thing you can use this tool for is going back to clients and saying, hey, we think that it's not realistic to double in 6 months. We think it's realistic to grow 50% in 6 months. And that's going to be 12 tactics. And you should expect about 3 things that we test to work every month, right? We're going to double down on those things. But most of the things we try are going to be failures, right? And that's despite the fact that, we thought it was a good idea. You thought it was a good idea. We planned it all out in advance and we launched it. We're still expecting to fail more often than we win, right? So that's something just to get clients' head around. Like, it's counterintuitive. Most marketers assume that everything they test wins, but it's because they never test anything, right? So when you're putting your homepage live, you're expecting 100% success rate, and if you don't test it, you never know whether that dip in conversion rate was due to the change that you made. Right? So this is how we should be thinking about marketing. This is how we should be checking whether a growth target is realistic with the resourcing that we have.